Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
Welcome to High Strangeness. I'm Tony, and this is the place where we talk about all things strange and unexpected in our reality. Today, we're going to do something different and fun. We're going to tackle a film that we saw and share some of the details of that film and our thoughts on that film. We think that with that kind of information, you can decide if it's a film you want to see. But we're going to cover UFOs or things in that field. Now, before we start in any of that, I'm very happy to have a co-host with me today who's actually a previous interviewee in episode 51, which comes out in December, or has come out in December, because this one will air in January. And if you want to know a little detail about him, check that episode out. Ron Mason is an experiencer and has experienced some things that really are very interesting, and he shared those experiences, his thoughts about them, and how he worked himself out of some crazy situations. So make sure you catch that episode. But for today, Ron is coming back, and we're going to chat about a film that we thought was pretty interesting as we looked at it. So the film is called Transmedium, Fast Walkers, and UFOs by Darcy Weir. And if you're not familiar with Transmedium, Fast Movers, or USOs, you're going to learn about that today. So as we get started, Ron, excited you're here with us today. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, Tony. Thank you very much for having me again. It's always a pleasure.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love talking with you, and this should be a lot of fun. Life's great.
Absolutely. And you are coming to us from California. And how's everything in the sunny state? Is it getting a little cooler out there? Because I know we're taping right around Thanksgiving. So
it was a high of 55 today, and it was pretty windy, and I could see leaves falling. I love this time of year. So I just want it to rain when I'm sleeping and be, nice and dry when I'm working. Actually, I drive a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Well, cool. And for everybody out there, I hope you had a great bunch of holidays now that we're in January or airing in January. So this film, Transmedium, Fast Movers, and USOs. Crazy. Some people out there may not know what some of these things are. So let's tackle some of it. USO. Ron, what do you think? And when you saw this, and maybe you already were well aware of USOs, what do you think a USO? Can you share that? What you think that is for the audience?
Well, it's what is it? An unidentified submersible object, right?
Right.
I've been, I've been reading UFO books since I'm 57 now, and since I was in my 20s, and I've read, I couldn't tell you pretty much everything to do in the genre of UFOs, from Roswell, ancient UFOs, and even USOs. I've heard a little. I'm not as familiar with USOs, but I've heard about underwater bases. People claiming to have seen things coming in and out of the water all around the world. What they are, we'll find. Same questions of UAPs. I'm still used to calling them UFOs. UAPs, USOs. There's a lot of theories.
Yeah, it's interesting. I also have paid attention in this space for, phenomena like this for a long time. And it is interesting because I feel like USOs, we've heard things about bases and stuff here and there. It's not mainstream. It's kind of a little deeper. You have to look a little deeper into this space to find people that talk about that. But USOs are not something that I have seen a whole lot written or any documentaries about. And it's being talked about more now, which is interesting. So sounds like same thing for you, right? You haven't really run into too much of this like you do for the normal phenomena.
No, not at all. There's always been theories that I've heard that they live in the middle of the earth even. You've heard that theory, right? Where they're from Earth, actually. Some people think, that this extraterrestrial from the Pleiades or, all over the galaxy, who knows where. Then there's those people who believe that they've been here the whole time.
Yes.
And
and we don't know yet.
No.
Maybe it's all the above. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. Well, it's interesting. So that's a USO, and we'll get into fast movers later, but Transmedium. For those of you out there who are not sure what that is, if you're a Skinwalker Ranch fan and you like to watch that, you see some of that in that episode, in that series, because they chase or see UAP or orbs that kind of go through things. And Transmedium is something that goes from space to atmosphere to water, in and out, pretty seamlessly. And that's the crazy thing about it, because when any of our technology, it can't do that very well. I mean, we've got we've got a plane that can land on the water, but it's not going to be a submarine. And we've got, planes or jets that go really, really high, but they don't maneuver kind of like these things do. So Transmedium, for everybody out there, is a very interesting thing. And it's one of those observables that Lou Elizondo talks about a lot. That kind of shows this is something more and beyond what we have in our technology as humans on Earth.
What can do that, right? What can, like we saw, the one that entered and into the mesa and then came out of the mesa. What is that technology? Is it something that can jump like, in and out of dimension? Is it, or what are we even looking at to begin with?
Right. It's so true. And it's interesting that interdimensionality appears on that show, that they're coming right on the edge of that as something they think it is. Because, geez, if it happens to be able to go through solid matter, that would be another transmedium. I don't think that's what we're seeing, but who knows?
Yeah.
When we look into it deeper, I guess. Yeah. Well, okay. So that's Transmedium, people, and USOs. Fast movers will come soon. This film is interesting. It jumps right into a scenario where 2020, there was the UAPTF, which stands for, let's see, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. And they have seen triangular craft coming out of the ocean. And they talk about that a little bit in the film. In fact, I'll make sure I play some footage from it on this episode as well. But it's really interesting that they show, a triangular ship coming out of the water, and they think these things are going in and out of the water like that. So it's not just orbs or tic tacs, it's triangles too. Have you ever heard of anything like that in any of the other things you've looked at over the years?
Well, we've been hearing about and seeing in reports and even video and photographs of triangular, whether they're UFOs or top secret, highly advanced military craft. It's hard to say, but those have been around for quite a while. I've been reading about those and hearing about those for quite a while. I would lean towards military craft on the triangular. That particular craft. It just strikes me as that might be something we can do.
Right. Yeah. In fact, isn't there and I can't remember the name of the vessel, but some claim that the military has something, the TR something. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And it is shaped triangular like that. So I think that's interesting. In fact, what I think is interesting about that TR 70 or whatever it is I remember seeing a picture that was on the internet maybe 10 years ago where somebody caught it on the top of a aircraft carrier. And it was circulating for a little bit, and then all of a sudden they're like, no, it can't be that. That was just, that was just photoshopped on there. But we're hearing that there is actually a vessel like that they have. So you make a good point. Maybe it's something like that.
It wouldn't surprise me because I don't forget who it was. who was being interviewed. I think it might have been on. Was it Art Bell or even after him, where they were saying that they were talking to somebody who claimed to have a liaison in the U.S. in the military, who obviously didn't tell them everything, but said, "We're talking Star Wars technology at Area 51. We're talking out of this world technology." So I tend to believe that we do have the capability of having technology as human beings that would literally blow the layman's mind away.
Yes.
And not to say that's what everything we're seeing, but I don't think it is everything we're seeing, but I think a lot of it is.
Yeah. I would agree with you. And it's funny because there's been some people out there talking about that, like Stephen Greer, for many years. And for a long time, there was a big space between like what he was saying and what other people were saying. They were calling him crazy, really. But it's funny because the more we see and hear about the things they're seeing, that space between what he said and what we're seeing is starting to shrink. Because he has been saying for many years that since the 50s, we've had anti-gravity or anti-gravitical technology, and that we, meaning the military or some black force service, has been using that for 50 plus years. I guess maybe it's like 70 years now. So who knows?
And black projects that the military spend billions and billions of dollars on to sit down in little rooms and work on these things. You never know what they can come up with after 60 years.
That's so true. So true. Okay, so one of the things that was talked about in the film that I thought was interesting, and I want to say I don't know much about this gentleman who was the one who had the film. Like, he's the one that was narrating and interviewing. His name is Darcy Weir. I've never seen anything from him. I don't know him very well, but he did a good job getting a few big hitters on the movie, and that was Richard Dolan, Tim Gallaudet, and Mark D'Antonio, which are all individuals that, people in the UAP community will know these names. Richard Dolan forever.
Yes.
Tim Gallaudet is the new retired admiral from the Navy who's been coming out lately and really sharing some of the stuff that he knows. And then Mark D'Antonio is a MUFON guy from quite some time.
Yeah.
But, it's pretty interesting. One of the things that they talked about, and I think it might have been Richard Dolan, where he said that a lot of these USOs, they go into the water with zero splash. Sometimes there's a splash, but zero splash. What do you think about that?
And they're at high speeds, right? So I mean at like Mach whatever, right?
Right.
So how does something do that? Good question. How and to not slow down, right?
Right. It's definitely something we can do. That's for sure.
I don't think we can do that. No, that's one of those instances where I have to say that I don't know if we have that kind of. That's definitely strange. That's where I think maybe we're seeing something that's able to be visible and tangible in an interdimensional kind of setting, to where it can actually move within our atmosphere physically, but at the same time not be bound by our dimension, maybe by our laws here. Yes.
Right.
Good. That's a good word to use. So it can do that, because that's the only thing I think in my mind that can explain how an object moving at that kind of speed or any speed wouldn't be but there would be no impact making contact with solid water, because nothing can do that. Even the greatest diver, perfectly.
It still makes a splash, right?
Splash, yeah.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about something else that did come up, and I can't remember. It might have been Richard Dolan who also brought up this enveloping, which is the potential of some kind of ability to warp gravity around a vessel. And he suggests that that's also maybe a possible way in which it can cut through every level of our atmosphere and into the water. And if it's true and it's got, gravitational push or some kind of anti-magnetism or something, it probably could push matter away. So it probably could go into the water or other things with minimal disturbance.
But you would still
just pushing everything.
You would still have a disturbance, right?
You would think.
Because you're gonna move it.
Right. Well, and this takes me to something we'll talk about in a few minutes, which is the fast movers underwater. So they talk about fast movers, and do you remember the story? It was Mark D'Antonio who was talking about when he was brought into one of these submarines, and he got the crew, whatever, he was doing something for them because he also does work for the government. They said, hey, do you want to go with us on this short trip or ride on the submarine? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And do you remember that story where he's in there and he's sitting up with others right by the console? And one of the individuals says, fast mover.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember he kind of got nervous. He thought it was a torpedo.
Yes, I remember that.
He was like, we're going to die. We're in trouble.
Yeah, not underwater. I don't want to die underwater.
Right. That's got to be one of the worst places to... Oh, that's got to be awful.
Oh, yeah, it's already
You're
scary.
Like entombed like that. It's scary.
Mm-hmm.
So, fast movers. And so everybody out there, that's part of the title a little bit. But he finds out, and he tells that story, that this is what the Navy calls... Well, they have a program. They call them fast movers, and they also call them jellyfish. Mm. Depends. Some of the airmen, or not airmen, I guess they're Navy men, call some of those things jellyfish because they don't make any sound and they just move. But mostly they're called fast movers because they just zip through and they can pick them up on their radar. And I thought it was kind of amazing. So when Tim Gallaudet gets in there and starts sharing a little bit about that, what he's heard from other officers and other submarines and stuff, he talks about the speed that they find these things, or they not clock them, but I guess radar them under the water. And I don't know, what did you think about that? I was amazed at the speed that they said these things were going under there.
I don't remember. Do you remember what speeds they were talking about? Do you remember 200 miles an hour? Wasn't it something like that?
No, it was 800 miles an hour.
800.
Yeah, the 200 miles an hour was they were talking about a technology that the Russians had for shooting a air bubble before a torpedo or a missile.
Yes.
And the missile would get caught. And they would go 200 miles an hour, which is extremely fast. But this is 800 miles an hour, going back to your point before, which is minimal disruption to anything around it.
It's obviously able to manipulate, the environment around it. And I'm kind of not sure if it's a technology or like I said, they're able to suspend their dimensionality, somehow. Because, there's debris, there's fish, there's whales, there's sharks, you're going to run into stuff, right? If you're going at that speed, you're bound to run into something. Maybe they have. I'm not saying that's, but to have very minimal, maybe not even any
collisions or something like that.
Either collisions or just not, the environment around it is just no ripple effect, no.
Right.
That's, what kind of? We don't.
What can do that?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the technology. Nothing that we could ever, way light years ahead of us, and when it comes to the tech, if it's a technology.
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing too is we know when something breaks the sound barrier, which I think is about 750 miles an hour.
Yeah. What about that?
Right. What happens? Kaboom! Right. That's what happens in air.
Yeah.
But in water, these submarines go, according to them, 35, 40 knots.
Yeah.
That's under 50 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
That's their speed. and this thing is going faster than the speed of sound underwater. That's just not even. I don't even know how that's possible.
That just brings up other questions about sonic booms, like you just said, because these UAPs go at thousands of miles an hour. No sound, no sonic boom,
no sound.
So I mean, it's not affected. Our atmosphere. It's not affected by our atmosphere. It's not the laws of the physics that we know, that we're bound by. Everything that we do that's physical in our atmosphere, above water or below the water. I mean, I don't know if you can. I mean, it's like one of those ones. If a bear, if you drop a log in the wood, and you're in the city, do you hear it? I mean, does it make a sound? Yeah, of course it does. But so there's never been any recordings of any sonic booms underwater, right? Of any kind. Nothing, because nothing can travel that fast underwater.
Right.
So,
and to your point about the disruption, about everything around it, let alone just hitting stuff, like it's pretty fantastical. Like we are nowhere near figuring that out. So as crazy as it is, the items are seeing in the atmosphere, this is worse. This is crazier. So
more baffling.
I don't know.
More baffling.
Yeah. So that's that, and we're going to probably talk a little bit more about that. But one of the things I thought was interesting in the movie, too, is it talked about the congressional hearings. Now, we just had one. We're in November now. We just had one after the election. We're about to have another one anytime now, too. And in this film, they were talking about the one where Sean Graves was, talking to Congress, and he starts sharing some of the things he was seeing. One of the most amazing things to me is this whole thing about a sphere and a cube flying, right? You've heard that before. Like, that doesn't even seem like something that can fly. It's just like a box flying through the sky. It's just crazy to me.
With no obvious propulsion, which we,
Yeah. It's really, I don't know. There's stuff happening all over the place, and we're seeing what we think we see, or like we're saying, or they have the capability of doing stuff that it's independent of our laws here.
Yes. Physics as we know it are out the window with these things. If it can't possibly have any kind of living being that's built with an atomic structure that would be split apart and right. I mean, atoms would split. Our molecules couldn't be held together at those speeds and the different direction. It would just split us apart. And so that's the theories. You've heard the theories over the years about maybe they must have some kind of environment within the vessel that's free of gravity as well. In order for that, whatever is in there to withstand all that, they would have to be free from our gravitational environment. It's baffling.
It's just mind blowing, is what it is.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just a layman, and we're talking about military people, the highest of the high. Either they're feigning ignorance, or they completely have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. Very, very crazy. Well, I think the researcher, documentary guy, he does a good job kind of sharing enough of these things throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I thought was interesting, I'm curious what your thoughts are, is the systems that the government has to assess and monitor under the water. Now, Tim Gallaudet does a good job not sharing anything too secretive, but he does talk about something called the SOSUS system. It's a passive sonar system. And he talks about things on the floor of the ocean, sending up different frequencies or vibrations. I'm not sure what it is, but they've got that. And then they have, like buoys and different things like that. And he says, although we've only really researched or discovered 5% of the ocean, he says that what they do monitor, that this equipment does a very good job. So he kind of proposes that the Navy has a lot of evidence that they're just not sharing. And so...
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't even know what to make of the information that is being shared, because they've had a disinformation campaigns since the very beginning, from the 40s.
True.
You know, Roswell. I mean, we got a UFO. Oh yeah, no, we don't. It's a downed weather balloon, and you know,
Right.
these things don't exist. It's swamp gas. I mean, it goes on, mix in truth with you know with lie, you know, cover ups. I mean, so it's a
Yes.
mix of both, and who they want to do that. I think that's purposeful. The misinformation campaign's been very powerful, very effective.
Yes. Yeah.
Fear tactics. They destroy people's lives. The Men in Black. The old the old stories.
Yeah.
Destroying people's careers. Maybe even worse, for all we know. I don't trust the. I mean, I'm not getting a conspiracy here, though. I'm just saying that government. How do you really trust them with the truth?
Right.
They don't owe it in their minds. They don't owe it to us. They think, a matter of fact, that we're not worthy of it, or we will misuse the truth, or we will completely freak out. And that's, we've heard that too. The fabric of the world of civilization, and it will fall apart if they knew everything that we know, and religious institutions would crumble, and I don't even know if I don't trust even them. I think those are all scare tactics, misdirection, manipulation, to change the narrative in the direction that they want it to go. So they know people are not going to stop asking.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, the information age that we're in now, it's impossible to hide everything. And they don't. I think they're not really losing the grip. I think they expected this to a degree. I just think that they will find a way to keep us
what do
guessing.
they say? They say the best lie is one that's got falsehoods mingled with truth.
Mm-hmm.
And you really can see that. Like we see it in our media where they twist and turn some image or some words by changing the context around it. And you're right. I mean, like, that's what makes things so tough right now. Mm-hmm. Is, how much can we trust the things that we hear? And I think it's pretty interesting. Now, I will say this. When this episode airs, 2 days from this episode will be an interview I did with a gentleman. It'll be episode 59, where he does explain to us all the interactions that have occurred between the military and ET. And he goes and does a deep dive into the history going back from 1917 to current of not only interactions and conflict, but some of the devastating results that have happened to man that the government will not share. In fact, this is when they say, oh, it was a training accident, and this is why these people passed away, but it's not really what's happening. So they are, it could be many different things out there, but in some cases, it's not so good for us when we do this. But it's weird because according to him, whether it's Russia or the United States, there's been a policy of take down that UAP so we can study it. And they've been firing on these things. And, what do you expect to happen when you fire at somebody with, whatever they are, they do things we can't do. Mm-hmm. And so it's crazy.
And you would think militarily that would be pretty much the same as right? If they really wanted to.
Right.
That's, if you asked me, that's where if I do have a problem, why? I mean, human nature is to, if I'm stronger than you and I'm bigger than you, I'm going to come and take from you what I want. I don't care who nobody who's going to stop me, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't care who gets in my way. I'll stop them too. Try to stop me. I'm gonna be so convincing in defeating and destroying this opponent. Nobody's going to want to fight with me, right? I don't get, and this is just me. Yeah, and I get, everybody. You can think any way you like. I just think if they really are that much more advanced and powerful than us, what's with all the secrecy? Even before we were able to develop split the atom, when we were in our infant stages of militarily, muskets or the Bronze Age and so forth. What did they wait for? What were they waiting for? What did they have to gain from secrecy? I mean, nothing.
Yeah.
They had nothing to gain. I mean, and they can come and take whatever they want if they can do these things. So there's a lot of theories, a lot of the hypotheses out there that I just can't wrap my brain around. I was like, it just doesn't make any sense from a superior race. We can grab ants by the handful and put them in a jar. There's nothing they can do about it. I'm not going to do it secretly in the stick of the night when they're sleeping, so the other ants don't see me do it. Right. I'm going to dig them up, put them in there, and I'm going to put them in my little ant farm, and I'm going to watch them.
Yeah. It is crazy.
Yeah.
For sure. And that's one of the biggest questions here is a superior capability and seemingly the ability to do what they want, right? But what's the constraint? Why? And yeah, when it's ever clear that through videos and other things that things are going on, there's things flying in the sky, and the governments of the world try to hide this. It's baffling why even bother at this point. It's just crazy.
It is interesting.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. I thought it was interesting in this film too. Maybe you'll remember they do spend a few minutes talking about the different depths in the ocean that different vessels are found. And he kind of alludes to the point that maybe there is under or on the seafloor, there may be bases, there may be things like that, because we get nowheres near that depth. He goes through and explains, where submarines spend their time and in different deep vessel submersibles and things like that. I thought that was pretty good. Had you ever seen somebody break that out like that?
No.
In any documentary? No,
that was a first for me.
I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. And if anything, people would really enjoy that too, just to get some
do you remember
education about that.
Do you remember what his did he have any, I don't remember that exactly everything he said about that. Did he have any ideas of his idea of why they have different types of vehicles?
You mean the UAP or?
Yeah, the
UAP.
No, the USOs. Yeah, they said that under the different depths, the different types of vehicles.
Yeah.
Did he say why he thought there might be?
Not really.
I didn't.
No,
I don't remember if you did. Okay.
Just more or less that they've seen a few different types of shapes. But you're right. That would have been an interesting way to go in the film. But maybe they just don't know.
Yeah, and I would think that if they're not bound by our physics, I don't think the ocean, the pressure, or the deeper you go would affect them anyway. So I don't think it would be about because of the pounds of pressure per square inch that the further you go. So I don't think that would be affected if they're not affected by anything else in our atmosphere or speeds underwater. I don't think they'd be affected by that.
That's a great point. You're right, because it appears that they have free reign, really, wherever they want to go.
They can do anything.
That's crazy.
Anything but reveal themselves to us publicly, and
right.
Yeah.
I know. Unless they have, who knows? There's some depends on which tunnel you want to go down. There's some people say that they do. So who knows, right?
Well, yeah, we had the experience of the people, the abductees and so forth. Yeah, but I mean on a mass.
True.
Yeah,
True.
Like on Independence Day, whoop, here we are.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty clear when that happens.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things that they talked about in the film too that I thought was interesting that I hadn't heard before was they called it the Shelburne incident, where that the ship's logs show that really for the first time there's any evidence that this has happened, that the military went to DEFCON 1 because of this huge fireball orb that was massive that came up out of the water over some ships, some of our aircraft carriers, and basically turned them all off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you remember that?
Yeah.
All of their power, all their sensory equipment, all of their offensive power also disconnected, shut off. And so they moved everything to DEFCON 1. Now, what were they going to do with that?
They
Try
couldn't
to fight
fire
them?
anything. They can't fire anything anyway.
Yeah.
That's not the first time we've
upsetting.
heard of that. You've read, right? That they've done that to military bases too, where they
Yeah.
didn't they actually? Wasn't there stories of them actually arming?
Yes.
Or
That's right. It was Russia, they armed.
yeah,
The United States, they turned us off.
yeah.
Crazy.
That's
I don't know, man.
it's not surprising then if they can do that, they can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think?
Well,
what do you think can do
what
that?
do I think?
I mean, do you have any thoughts about that at all? I mean,
I truly am, excuse me, I'm truly baffled by it because it just shows the ability to, just infiltrate all of our technology like it's nothing. I don't know. I don't know how you, I don't know.
they're the ultimate hacker.
It's a baffling thing.
Yeah, they're
The ultimate hacker. That's a great way to put it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, computers, they're vulnerable to electromagnetic fields. They can be completely, a grid can be completely wiped out by a solar flare, a strong enough solar flare, or an EMP weapon of some kind. I'm surprised that hasn't happened, to be honest with you. But
That's true.
I'm just thinking that computers are a technology that can be manipulated by somebody who's better at computers.
That's that's a great point. In fact, what you're getting me to think of when you say this is, how like I don't know if it's the military, but some of the people in special ops, that sort of thing, have the ability to really listen into our phone calls. Like they can just cut right through and catch that, sound wave or whatever, and they're able to do that. And so it's probably the same thing. Maybe our whole computer systems, maybe it's that vulnerable too, but we just don't know it. And they're able to do that as simply as, cut in, read everything that's going on, reprogram, turn it on, turn it off. Really shows like that could be the case.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things, and we talked about this a little bit earlier about the enveloping. And as I'm just looking at some notes here, I do realize that it is Richard Dolan who talked about this a little bit. He does it on the film. He says that some believe that a field is created around these things and that it can displace water. He gives an example in the movie about a time when somebody was on the beach and they saw one of these come out of the water. And the water actually was it caved in like this. So like it's almost like there was an invisible bowl placed on the water and it pushed the water down. Really kind of suggesting that had a field around it that can push down or away water. I think he called it cavitation cavitation. I think that's what he called it. And he also makes an interesting observation with that. Do you remember in the Fravor incident with the Tic Tac, where he's coming down, he's in the Air Force, he comes down and he sees this Tic Tac, and he sees water, looked like it was frothing and moving around, and then he sees the Tic Tac. He suggests, Richard Dolan, that this kind of displacement of water could create that churning of water like that. And so, you remember David Fravor saying something like it was almost like the Tic Tac was communicating with something on the water. Maybe there really was something under the water.
Mm-hmm.
So
I remember him saying that.
Yeah. I think it's fun to see the connections between what different people say and how they kind of connect to something else maybe seen or said previously.
See, for
this
me,
reminds me of that.
For me, that what you're talking about, that like that field or whatever around it, some people would like call it that's a force field,
Right.
To me, that also lends a little bit, for me, helps me to lean back again towards the dimensional part. Because just because you're observing it and you're clocking it and you've got it on radar, maybe that little surrounding field or whatever it is around it is the technology or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That's
opening up space or something,
or it's just that it never leaves that particular one, or maybe it does when it wants to, but it can stay there, and maybe that's it being in that dimensional in between. Maybe it's still it's traveling in there, and then when it wants to come out, boom, it can come out, and then boom, I don't know. That's just something. I think it's
as good a theory as any.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Yeah.
It's doing something. It's something that's protecting it from being touched. Maybe, no, I don't think it, like in Independence Day, when they're firing the weapons at it, it just stopped, in the field. That's the movie, obviously. That was a force field. This could be a very, I think, could be the interdimensional aspect of coming in between, coming through, and it can it can stay in that anytime. It can go in and out of that anytime it wants. And maybe that was an actual witnessing of that particular thing taking place. We don't know. I mean,
very true. Yeah, it's just amazing all the way around. So I'm going to get into your thoughts here on some of this in a few minutes. But I want to wrap up the film from what I remember anyway. I just want to end with the actual film part, which they talked about things coming in and out of lakes. Lots of examples and sightings of things coming out of lakes worldwide and ocean too. So, maybe there's just a lot more going on here with not just what we're seeing in the air, but underwater as well. And I think the film kind of makes that suggestion. And it looks like there's evidence for that. So I think it's pretty interesting. Yeah. Well, let me ask you a couple things as we try to kind of do a review of the film, and then let's get into our thoughts of opinions on things.
Okay.
Did you enjoy the film?
I did. I thought it was better than better than I was expecting, because I've seen a lot of ones. I was like, I just wasted 30 minutes of my life.
Right.
For another one of these, it was pretty good.
I agree. I liked it too, and it was worth it. Was it movie theater worthy? No, but it was very good, actually. They did a good job, and they paced it well, and they moved around in interesting topics and supported those topics, I thought, in a decent way. Yeah. So do you think the visuals... The quality of the, some of the special effects that they used and things like that when they were describing things, do you think that went well?
Yeah, I did. I thought they did a very good job. It kept me watching it.
Yes.
It kept me from coming to this interview saying, "I'm sorry, man, I couldn't finish it."
I know, right? Which I've watched some like that, like you're saying, and it's like I can't finish.
I can't believe he wants me to watch this whole movie. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm with you. It was not bad at all. I mean, it was pretty good. I think if anything, the narrator, Darcy Weir, was maybe a little slow in some of his questions, but this is a tough topic, so maybe that's part of it. But
he does have that kind
probably be.
He does have that kind of lull you, kind of, not to sleep, but
Right.
he just has that. Is he like a Southern gent? Because
Maybe.
because
I
us
don't really know.
Californians, we talk pretty fast.
Yeah.
We're whereas the Southern, they're kind of relaxed. Just relax a little. Let's just talk this through.
Right. Yeah, could be. So people, if you watch the film, and you probably should, just be aware that there's a little bit of that with the narrator or the interviewer.
It's worth a listen. Though.
What do you think were its good points and bad points? Was there anything that you go, I wish they didn't do that? Or anything you thought, that was pretty well done and memorable?
I thought the production itself was solid all the way through.
Yeah.
It was one of those ones where it was solid. Yeah, and it's not like a gladiator movie. There wasn't, there wasn't a lot of scenes that just that climax to that scene. It wasn't like that. It was just solid all the way through. Dolan, of
Yeah.
course. Like you said, Dolan's been in this game a long time, and anything that he brings into this brings credibility into the production. I think the one that stood out to me was when sorry, I don't remember the guy's name, but I've seen him plenty of times. The one guy that was talking about the flashes, the flashing, coming here in and out of dimension, that pop in and out. That stuck to me because that's kind of where I fall on it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense to me.
Makes sense.
That's an example of popping in and out of our reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm with you. I think probably just because this is a newer figure in the scene of this kind of stuff is the Tim Gallaudet guy, the retired Navy officer.
Mm-hmm.
I liked him a lot as well because he's just newer to the scene and, he's kind of like the new shiny thing out there where, you haven't heard from him a bunch. So I like that they had him on there. And once again, he's somebody who's been on the sea. So there's a lot of credibility with with the USO topic when it comes to him. So I thought that was pretty good. Okay.
Can I say one thing?
Can
I say one thing about that?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I'm always very cautiously optimistic whenever you hear about it from a military personnel, whether retired or not, about continuing their disinformation campaign in and out, even after retirement. I'm not saying that's what he's doing by all means. I don't know his heart. I don't know what's in his mind. I don't know his motivation because I'm not him. But we've just seen this UFO community throughout the decades has seen too much, like you said earlier, truth mixed with lies, which is the perfect way to confuse everything. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying that's what he's doing. I just don't know if even the military people at the congressional hearings. I mean, obviously we got the footage of the Tic Tac. I don't think they're lying about that, obviously, but we just don't know what their motivations are completely. We don't know what their if they have any alliances to upper people telling them what to do and what to say. And I'm going to authorize you to disclose this, and I want you to say this, and we're going to leave it at that. And if you go any further, and then they have their disclosures, what the top secret, what they still have to hold to their agreements that the military holds you to. What do you call it? Classified information at the threat of being thrown in jail and so forth. So I don't know. I have a hard time, and I really am not a conspiracy theory guy.
Yeah.
I don't trust powerful people in powerful places who can control information and have been lying to us and been caught in lie after lie after lie for decades.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what reality.
I'm going to tell you. Yeah. You bring up a great point and it is something that I think everybody has to keep in on their mind.
Yeah, they should at least.
Because you're right. Like, this guy and all people need to be vetted, and then even still, you don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, you make a good point.
I mean, they can publicly, retire and do this and that, but we don't. What are their top secret terms of it? I mean, I just said I wasn't a conspiracy theorist, and there I go. It's a conspiracy.
No, you're cautiously, you're cautiously looking at this, because what are we really getting, right? That's kind of what you're saying, and it's true. I think people have to keep that in mind, because you don't know what the motivation is between some of these people, or about, where they're coming from, and what their marching orders are. So it is hard. And I think Lou Elizondo has gone through a lot of that, the accusation from the public, because a lot of people don't trust him. And so we'll see where it all goes, but that's a good point to make. So
I hope I'm not.
I want to ask you this before we get into some of your thoughts.
Okay.
I want to ask you, how would you rate the film? 1 to 5, 5 being it's a must-see movie, 1 being not very good. How would you rate it?
Oh man, I'd say around between a 3 and a 4. A 3.5, 3.5,
3.5. Yeah, exactly. Worth seeing.
Yes.
But to have the right expectations going into it. I agree.
I think it's hard to break a 4 in these kind of films, just because the expectations of the person watching it. You're always going to be left wanting something, right? So I would say I'd give unless it's terrible, even the best of these is maybe a 4 at the best.
Right. That's true. So not bad. Yeah. Okay. I want to get, before we wrap up this episode, I want to get your thoughts on some of these things. So I know, we've talked offline a little bit about the dimensions, interdimensionality, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to share some of your thoughts on that, so others listening can marinate, let that just sit in their mind, and give them another thing to think about.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm going to come from a place that's, I'm sure people have heard before, but the interdimensionality. I think we're dealing with interdimensional beings, interdimensional beings, and not just interdimensional beings. I'm not talking about not dimensions from another planet, because a dimension is a dimension. It's just another place that we separate from our reality.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see how I want to put this. These interdimensional beings, I believe, are supernatural. I don't believe they're alien. I don't even believe they're human or a hybrid of any kind. I believe they're supernatural. I believe they have abilities that go beyond what a physical being is capable of.
That's what I was going to ask you. When you talk supernatural, it could be a broad term for people. Can you define what, when you think of supernatural, like, what are you saying? What are you thinking?
Well, I'm talking about the angelic and demonic realm.
Ah, I see. Okay.
I'm thinking of an ancient, with ancient abilities, not bound by any sense of our physics or laws that we know, and I think we see a lot of that, and I know a lot of people will disagree with me, and that's fine. Isn't that what this is all about? We're trying. We are all trying to get to the bottom of this, right?
Yes.
I believe that this is not something new. I believe this is a reality that's always been there since the beginning of creation. I'm a creationist. I believe that we were created by God, the Almighty. And you were talking earlier about the half lies and half truths, was what Satan did to Eve in the garden, right? How effective is that approach to getting to distorting the truth, to get people to even just question what you just told me. Maybe you could tell me something, and then
Right.
somebody else could whisper in my ear, was that really what he said? Maybe, I don't know, maybe. And so that just something that came to mind earlier. But I believe that's what's going on here, and I believe that's
So
why they can.
spiritual, really. There's a big spiritual element here. Is what you're
These are
saying.
spiritual
Yeah.
beings, not held
Yeah.
to the laws of physics in the physical realm that we know it. And the, you hear a lot of people that have abductees that they speak to them telepathically, right?
Right.
Yes, that's what something that would in the same sense, people who have experienced demonic oppression or possession, the same phenomenon. They hear
Yeah.
voices, they speak to them, and so forth. As these things come and go, and they can do things, and without you seeing them doing it, things move on their own, and so forth. So I'm thinking I'm thinking they're one and the same. I've been looking into the parallels between demonic possession and abductee phenomenon, and and then sleep paralysis and all that. I'm telling you, it's so similar.
Yeah.
And that's just my belief, and I love it. I love to talk to people about these things,
Yeah.
and I love it when people disagree with me. I want to have these dialogues, and I want to do it in a way that we do it. I
Right.
don't want
Right.
people arguing and fighting about it, and we're all just trying to figure this out.
Very true. And I'm glad you shared that, because I think that's important for people to hear all these different viewpoints on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look hard at any of these, you can be sold on a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And so, but we know that there's been the spiritual element since the start of man on this planet. And, whether you are looking at scripture, folklore, tradition, oral traditions, there seems to be this element throughout the course of history. So, yeah, I think there's a good chance that that's where a lot of this is coming from. And you do hear things from some scientists and those people in these UAP type programs that go, this is not just nuts and bolts ship. There's other stuff going on here. And they seem to be very baffled by it. And they would be if it's a spiritual element, because it's baffled man from the beginning, other than those who religiously believe what they believe, right?
Well, like when the episode you did with me airs, you talk about my experiences there. I'm not going to talk about that right now, because that way, But there's definitely something there. There's definitely something there, and it's terrifying. I mean, not every instance is going to be a terrifying experience for everybody, because I think there's different agendas. I think there's different approaches for different people. For an intelligent, supernaturally intelligent being to approach people in different ways. So it's not going to be the same experience for everyone, and that's the part that's why it's so hard to put your thumb underneath it. I think sometimes, because put it under your thumb, because it's not all the same, but it is. It is. It's just it's there's a lot of deception in it. And we're like right now in the world, even everything we're dealing with right now in the world, it seems like reality seems to be upside down. People can't trust what they're even seeing these days. What you're reading, do you really know what's the truth anymore? It's and I understand somebody. For me, I'm a man of faith. I'm not frightened by that, because to me, I know the truth. And the truth has set me free. Right, with those people that are just trying to figure out on without that, I think is. To me, it's terrifying to think that where I would be if I didn't have that.
Yeah.
I would fall apart probably.
Great information. And I want to encourage people to listen. I think it was episode 51 where we did your interview, and folks can really get a chance to hear Ron's experiences and his views on it. And I thought that was a great episode. So check that out as well. And as we wrap up this one today, thank you for sharing your thoughts on what you think it is. I personally am just wide open, eyes wide open, and I have my beliefs on different things, but I'm letting it all come in still. And it's fun. It's fun to do it.
Yeah.
So I want to say, I'm going to keep you on the line for a minute, Ron, at the end of this. But I want to thank you for being on this and doing this. This was fun.
Oh, yeah.
And we got a chance to look at this interesting topic like USOs and Transmedium. It was good stuff.
Yes.
And so for the rest of you out there, the film is called Transmedium, Fast Movers, and USOs. You can find it on Amazon Prime. And we both think it's worth a watch.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and do that. Now, I'm sure we'll be doing more of these. But until then, I want everybody to remember there's a lot of strange and unexpected in our reality. And so always keep your eyes, ears, and minds open. And until next time, stay safe.
All right.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.